Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We welcome everyone for today morning reading. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So today we're going to start from chapter number 1, verse number 1. Dhritarashtravacha Dharmashetre Kurushetre Samaveta Yuyusavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakavata Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Purport. So here Srila Prabhupada gives the background on Bhagavad Gita, what's the scene. However, the first few lines of the purport are extremely important, and the rest of the purport will talk about the scene of battlefield. So please pay attention. I will not explain these, but I want you to all contemplate on later on. Maybe on the Sunday when we have this Gita special program, I might speak on this. Bhagavad Gita is a widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself. In the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is a specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So that's the kind of introduction to whole Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada gives. Now, about the verse which is being discussed. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya is described in the Mahabharata form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage, Dharmashetra, from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. What is the meaning of Dharmashetra? Next paragraph. A place where religious rituals are performed is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want to compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place and the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya, who was Sanjaya? That is described now. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. Actually, before the battle began, Vyasa had come once more with an attempt with the hope that Dhritarashtra would understand the outcome of the war would not be good for him. And when he came and he spoke to Dhritarashtra again did not agree. He said, I'm helpless, father. If I don't agree to my condition of my son, he'll commit suicide. I love my son, etc., etc. He had this pet dialogue which he would offer all the time. And then Vyasa became a little upset and angry, and he said, all right, hell with you. And of course, he didn't say hell with you. This is a modern slang to say, nothing good will happen to you. And he began to walk away. And suddenly he turned back and he said, okay, Dhritarashtra, well, you are so adamant to have this war, so let me give you the visions by which you can see it. And Dhritarashtra became scared. At the heart of his heart, he knew there are going to be a gruesome consequences. He said, no, I don't want to see what's going to happen on the battlefield. I don't need that blessing. But Vyasa was, he thought this is the only way when he'll get to see. When you hear, when the incident happened, that's a different thing. But when you see a live, hearing and also watching, that has a stronger impact. So then Vyasa at that point of time, he said, okay, well, if you don't want it, then I'll give it to Sanjay. And then he blessed Sanjay. That's how Sanjay got this vision. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. So this paragraph talks about Mamaka Pandavas Shaiva, third line. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. Why? Mamaka, like that. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious person headed by Yudhishthira would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmashetra and Kurukshetra, apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Once again, sloka number 1, where Dhritarashtra asked Sanjay the question, what happened at the battlefield when my sons and the Pandu sons have assembled? Text number 2. Sanjay Vacha Drishvatu Pandavani Kam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachan Avravit. Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. So Sanjay is not describing what is happening on the battlefield. Purport. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjay could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. Sanjay wanted therefore to encourage the despondent king and thus assured him his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place, Dharmashetra, Kurukshetra. Sanjay therefore informed the king that his son, Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief, Dronacharya, to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as a king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician. But Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas. So here in text number 2, Sanjay describes what is happening on the battlefield. Duryodhana goes to the commander-in-chief after seeing the assembly of Pandava's army. Text number 3. What happens next? Pashyatam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatam Chamam Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. Duryodhana is speaking. Now the focus is on the battlefield, and what's happening on the battlefield is being described. So Duryodhana is speaking to commander-in-chief. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of the Pandu, so expertly arranged by an intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. So Drishtadumna, right? The son of Drupada. So he was the commander-in-chief of the Pandavas' army. So here Duryodhana criticizes Dronacharya. Papa, Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to find out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupad, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice by which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya, now this is something Just a little history, but it was worth relishing it. What was the culture then? What kind of people used to exist? Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, yet as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Drupad, Drishtadumna, was entrusted to him for military education. So Dronacharya trained a person who he knew very well from the day one is going to kill him later on. Now on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, if it fast forward to Kali Yuga, if the teacher would have been today like this, he would have killed the boy then and there only. This is Kali Yuga advancement. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Dushadumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for their military flanks. After having learned the art from Dronacharya, Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this, he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to defeat. So here in text number 3, Duryodhana speaks to Dronacharya, trying to invoke him, agitate him, and trying to find out a fault in him and tell him, because of you, see, we are put into a little difficult situation. Okay, text number 4. Atra shura maheshasha bhimarjuna shamayadi yudhano viratascha drupadascha maharata. Here in the Samya, many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. We have fighters like Yudhan, Virat, and Drupad. Even though Drishtadumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were causes of fear for Kauravas. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them. So here he is kind of, he's telling his team, please look there, don't think we are the very powerful people, but there are people very strong also. So these are the people who we need to hit the first. If we get them down, then we can win the war. So like that, his mindset is going on. Text number 5. Drashtaketu chekitana kashirajascha viryavan purujet kunti budascha shebhascha narapungava. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Drashtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kuntibhuj, and Shebhya. And whose army? Pandava's army. Text number 6. Yudamanyascha vikranta uttamaujaschya viryavan saubhadro draupadeyascha sarveva maharatha. There are the mighty Yudhamanu, very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. And whose army? Pandavas. Text number 7. Asmakam tu vishishtaye tan niboda dujottama nayaka mama shainasya samagnatam tan bravimite. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are specially qualified to lead. Whose army? My army, Kaurva's army. Now he will compare. Now he will give a motivational talk. Text number 8. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitim Jaya Ashwathama Vikarnascha Saumadattas Tathaivacha. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurishava, were always victorious in battle. So among all this personality, one personality does not fit the name list, and that is Vikarna. So Prabhupada explains why he took the name of Vikarna, who was not of the same category as other warriors. Purport. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is a brother of Duryodhana. Ashwathama is a son of Dronacharya. And Saumadatti or Bhurishava is a son of king of Bhahilakas. Karna is a half-brother of Arjuna as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with the king Pandu. Oh, here it's not mentioned. Okay, we'll see how it may come. Right? So Vikarna was the only one who actually had supported. It was Vikarna only, right? Vikarna was the only one who had actually supported during the dice game Draupadi's plea for protection. And he had actually chastised Dushasan for dragging her, catching her by hair dragging. So here Duryodhana thought, Vikarna already has a soft side for the Pandavas. So he thought, let me boost his morale by telling him that I consider you equivalent to the exceptional warriors. So you will think, if I am given that prestige, let me fight for Kauravas. Because he was wondering, because what will happen in those days before the war will begin? There used to be one common announcement. किसी को पार्टी बदलनी है, बदल लो. फिर party seal. So like that, he was like, I don't want to lose even a single warrior. Text number 9. Annecha bahava shura madarte tyakta jivita nana shastra paharna sarve yuddha visharadaha. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. This is already destined. All these rascals will die along with me. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science, purport. As far as others are concerned, like Jayadrat, Kritavarma, and Shalya, all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. Prabhupada. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the mentioned combined strength of his friends. Now, motivation talk. Text number 10. Aparyaptam tad asmakam balam bhishma virakshitam paryaptam tu idam etesham balam bhima virakshitam. Now, our strength is immeasurable. We are perfectly protected by the grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Perfect. Herein an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. So Duryodhana was confident that I would definitely win the war because I have people who are willing to lay their lives for me, and I'm protected by the strength of Bhishma, who is invincible. He had invincible, unconquerable, and people who could not be killed, like Bhishma Pitama, who had a blessing to die on his own will. Similarly, our Dronacharya, who also had a blessing to choose when to give up his body, cannot be defeated. Similarly, Kripacharya. And if you see, Bhishma revealed the secret how to be killed. So which means he decided. Similarly, Dronacharya, he actually didn't lose the war. He went into samadhi when his father came and said, "What are you doing? Why are you killing innocent soldiers? You're breaking all the rules. You're not even acting as a Kshatriya now. You're acting like a Shudra. Forget about fighting as Brahmana." And then, because he was very, very sorry because his son had died, he really loved his son a lot. So then his father came and told him, "Enough is enough. You have to now give up his body." Being instructed like that by his father, Dronacharya sat on his chariot, not on the chariot, on the battlefield, on the ground, and he went into samadhi. And that's the time Drishtadumna came and killed him. So again, it was Dronacharya who decided to leave his bodyguard. And the third person was Kripacharya, and Kripacharya never died only. Kripacharya continued. So if you have 3 non-out batsmen, how can you ever win the test match? That is what it is. An invincible. Text number 11. Aneshu cha sarveshu yadabhagam avastita vishwameva virakshantu bhavanta sarva evahi. And now he makes another diplomatic move. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand up at your respective strategic points of entrance into the flanks of the army. Now, until now he was talking to Dronacharya. Why did he brought Bhishma in between? Because he thought, Dronacharya is a Brahmana. And the Bhishma Pitama had been the general of this army for all the while. And it is Bhishma who brought Dronacharya. He is the one who brought Dronacharya to train all of us. And if I'm already only praising Dronacharya, aisa na Bhishma Pitama chale jaye. He should not pack his bag and go on vacation. So he thought, let me speak about Bhishma Pitama. So that's the reason I said, So Prabhupada, Duryodhana's, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considering that others might think that they had been considered less important, so in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in other words. He emphasized that Bhishma Deva was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the battle, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the flanks. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Deva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Deva and Dronacharya in the battle because he knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had gone during the gambling performances. Text number 12. Now, if you see, interestingly, Karna is not being highlighted here. Anyone knows the secret? We'll see. Text number 12. Tasya sanjanayam harsham kuru vradda pitamaha simanadam vinadoche shankam dadamo pratapavan. Then Bhishma. So Bhishma, they didn't say anything. Understanding the intention of Dronacharya, Duryodhana, he immediately blew the conch shell to declare the war to begin. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandson of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Puppet. The grandson of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. And then, so blowing of the conch shell was a way of announcing that we are ready to fight. And then the other party will blow the conch shell. And behind the conch shell, so there were all kind of musicians who were part of the war. And now they'll begin to play the kettle drums, all the musical instruments, dum 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 dum. It's just like Gaurati is about to begin. So for Kshatriyas, it's like dancing in a kirtan, fighting in a battle. All right, text number 13. Tataha shanka shabreyasya panvanaka gomaka sahay savavaya hanyanta sha shabdastamalo bhavat. After that, conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Just like every morning, 4:30, all the brahmacharis run for Mangalarti, excited. Mangalarti, we'll have darshan of the Lord. So is the excitement of Kshatriyas. Today we're going to fight, Haribol. Like that. And then text number 14. Tataha shveter hairyukte mahati sandane sito madhava pandavaschaiva divya shanko pradatmato. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. So you might have noticed Karnaji is not mentioned here. Well, Karnaji said Tata bye-bye to Duryodhana. He said, I'll go for 10-day retreat and come back. No, I'm just joking. He didn't say like that. He said in a more gross and more harsh speech, he said, I'll only come and enter the battlefield when this old gentleman, well, he didn't say gentleman, he said this old fellow, this rascal Bhishma dies. Because Bhishma and Karna had a little conflict before the battle began, and Karna became extremely angry. He said, I'll only enter the battle when Bhishma dies. Why? Because he was worried. If I have to support Bhishma, then everyone will glorify Bhishma brought the victory. So I would only enter the scene when Bhishma dies, which means at least if Bhishma wins the war in my absence, nobody will still say, Bhishma was the most strong warrior, because I was not there to prove myself. So he wanted this whole war that Karna took part was only to prove himself. He had nothing to do with Duryodhana. A very simple point, all right? Text number 14, purport. In purport, in contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shell in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna described as transcendental. You see the word? Divayau Shankau Padatpataho. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yesham Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni to Arjuna, and this indicated that the chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Text number 15. Now we have the names of the conch blown by the different personalities, Krishna, Arjuna, Yudhishthira, Bhima, etc., etc. Very beautiful verse. Panchajanyam Rishikeshu Devadattam Dhananjaya Poundaram Namo Mahashankham Bhimakarma Vrakudara. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta. And Bhima, the voracious eater, Vrakudara, performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Poundra, puppet. Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesh in this verse. So one thing you might want to make note, we are anyways reading Sanskrit, you'll see the personalities. Abhi right now the history is going on, but over when you, from second chapter onwards, where the conversation becomes largely focused between Krishna and Arjuna, you want to note for yourself that Arjuna will call Krishna with different names and Krishna will call Arjuna with different names. And it is highly contextual to convey a particular meaning. Therefore, please be attentive. So here, Sanjay is describing the scene. So he is calling Krishna, not Krishna, as Rishikeshu. That has a meaning to convey to Dhritarashtra. And Prabhupada tells what is that. Puppet. Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesh in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities and part and parcel of him. Go with that. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities. Therefore, they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Very important point. So how does sense control happens? Only by the Lord, not by us. And what we have to do if you want to control the senses, surrender to Krishna. Please mark this line, okay? Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesh. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudev because he appeared as son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandan because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashodanandan because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Partha Sarthi because he worked as charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Rishikesh because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditure for different sacrifices, particularly Rajasuya Yajna. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vrakodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the Lord, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle. And that was a message announced by the sounds of the conch shell, and that is the indication given by who? Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. Text number 16 to 18, we'll leave this to text and we'll pause for today. All right. Now about other brothers of Pandavas, about their conch shells is described. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthira Nakula Sadaiva Shaiva Sugosho Manipushpakau Kashyascha Parameshwasha Shigandicha Maharataha Drishtadumno Viratascha Satyakecha Parachitaha Drupato Drupatehascha Sarvasha Prithivipate Subhadrascha Mahabaho Shankhan Dadamo Prathak Prathak. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijaya. Nakul Sahadev blew Shugosh and Mani Pushpaka. the great archer of the king, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadumna, Virat, unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty arm son of Subhadra, all blew their conch shells. Puppet. Sanjay informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle. Beginning with the grandsire Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world, all were present there, and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. So Prabhupada says Sanjay very tactfully described the situation because while describing, the Kaurava side, he just mentioned one verse about the blue of the conch shell by Bhishma Pitama, and not even the name of the conch shell is mentioned. Here, he spoke almost 4 verses, describing how, 5 verses literally, describing how Arjuna, Bhima, Krishna, everyone blew their conch shell. Not only that, he initially said only the conch shell were transcendental. So this was subtly a meaning was given because see, Sanjay was present when Vyasadevji came to talk to Dhritarashtra, and he knew that direct meaning is not making any sense. So he was slowly, subtly telling him, whom are you fighting with? You're fighting against Lord Shri Krishna and his eternal associate. Therefore, he used the word Divyam. And that's the reason Prabhupada says, he tactfully conveyed that your policy of enthroning your sons to be the king of the whole world is going to be very futile. It's going to bring about destruction. That's the reason Prabhupada concludes the whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. And what happened after they blew the conch shell? That will be the discussion for tomorrow onwards. Our time is up for today. With that, we conclude for today. Thank you all for joining in. If in case anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to send your questions on what is that? Ask a question, something, right? Web link. All of you have shared that. And what is that? And I believe whatever questions were asked until last evening have been already answered. Some by me and some by our team members. So once again, thank you all for joining in. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. One last thing, before I conclude, I hope all of you have got access to the Gita Essence Course as well as the Be Yogi Course on our website so that you can access the presentation. Some of you were asking for presentations. So there's no presentation for this because we're reading directly from Bhagavad Gita. But there are presentations for another course that we have done before called as Gita Essence, where you get the whole summary of the chapter. And there is also a video class for the summary-wise discussion for the whole chapter. So if you have not signed in, do sign in for the registration and you'll get access to the course. In case if you're having any technical difficulty, you can definitely write to us or contact us. With that, we conclude for today. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Hare Krishna.